Howdy my totally always tubular gamers, we're back with, you guessed it, another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, maybe stick around a while. I got a fun video for you. I got a singular review today. Today we're going to be talking about a game I've been looking forward to, and that is Crow Country. But before we begin, I do want to give a major shout out to the publisher for hooking me up with a review code. It is very much appreciated. I really was looking forward to this game. So what exactly is this game? You might not have heard of it. It is a throwback survival horror game that is very much in the style of a PS1 horror game that is similar to, say, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Parasite Eve, you know, the classics. But how is it? That's what we're about to find out. But before we begin, gotta give a thanks to today's sponsor. Hey, Crow Country seems like a pretty cool horror game, right? Well, what if after playing it you want to check out some more horror games? Maybe check out some of the newer Resident Evils, or if you've played those already, maybe check out some new exciting horror games you've never heard of, and maybe you want to do it on the cost-effective side. Well, do not fear, that is where today's sponsor comes in, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming can offer you hundreds of horror games for relatively low prices. Maybe you've always wanted to check out the Resident Evil 2 remake. Here's the deluxe edition on Steam for under $8. Under $8! I paid $59.99 for this game. Alright, say you've already played that one. They've got brand new titles on here. They got the Outlast Trials for $25. Man, this game just came out. They got tons of horror games to check out. Instant Gaming really does pride itself on not just being another key site. Everything is actually from authorized sellers. They even got 24/7 customer service if you need help. All you gotta do is make an account, and these games can be yours, and you can really start saving some money. These are personalized links, so they will help out the channel. Go save some money. Thank you to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video. So anyway, Crow Country takes place in 1990, and it stars Mara Forrest, this woman who is a detective who gets sent to Crow Country, an abandoned, rundown amusement park, and she's looking for the owner, a Mr. Crow, for questioning about a certain incident. And that is all I'm going to say about it, because the story is absolutely not what it seems, and it's one of the strongest points of this entire game. The mystery surrounding Crow Country, the characters, the world, it's all very interesting, it's fascinating, and it's one of my favorite aspects of this game. It had me really intrigued throughout, and the more I learned, the more questions I raised, and they actually do get answered by the end of it, and I think the game is a pretty strong conclusion. The story, it's very good. The characters are good. The writing, while pretty basic, is still good. And I think the game is a really solid hook, a good mystery to really let you sink your teeth into. You're going to be intrigued, you're really going to want to find out what happens, and the way everything comes together, I think it's actually very well done. Now, the first thing you'll notice with this game when you see it is definitely the visuals. The visuals are very striking, and in my opinion, they really grab your attention. It was one of the first things I noticed and really got into when I saw this game. I went, ooh, I love the visuals, I love how they look. This game really understands that PS1 aesthetic, but it also has some modern sensibilities and twists thrown in there as well. Like, it looks too good to be a PS1 game. It very much has that aesthetic and vibe, but it looks too good to be a PS1 game. I mean, the character models are all blocky like a PS1 game. It actually remind me more of Final Fantasy VII, and the environments very much feel like the older Resident Evil games, but it all comes together just a little too crisp, a little too nice. It has like this filter over it, but it still does look good. And the frame rate was buttery smooth the entire time. What I'm trying to say is, if you like the PS1 aesthetic of older survival horror games, I think you're going to like the aesthetic here. It's simultaneously retro and nostalgic, but it also tries to do something new and different with its aesthetic. When it comes to the atmosphere, oh, they absolutely nailed it here. They totally nailed that classic survival horror atmosphere. It's tense, it's dark. I was really picking up what this game was putting down. I love the atmosphere and the vibes of this game. Like, I have just been missing these vibes from survival horror games for quite some time. I really think they nailed it here. But all of that wouldn't matter if the gameplay was total ass. So let's talk about the gameplay. This game, it does play like a classic survival horror game. The first thing I will mention is that it actually does something that no other survival horror game on the PS1 did. It has a fully rotatable camera. There is not fixed camera angles. There is no tank controls. You can really move that bad boy 360 degrees, and you can see everything from every angle, and there are plenty of instances where stuff is hidden in the background, like items or traps, and the only way to have seen this is by rotating that camera, and so it leads to a greater sense of exploration. And when you come back to other areas, maybe from a different angle, you might see things that you didn't see before. This legit happened to me several times, and every time I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. And if need be, you can even snap the camera right behind your character. The camera never was an issue for me, and I actually think that it's well implemented here, and it's a good twist on the classic formula. Outside of the camera, when it comes to the other parts of this game, it very much is that traditional survival horror experience. You're kind of just dropped into an area, given some vague clues or hints on what you're supposed to do, and really you'll just explore. While exploring, you'll find items and resources, you'll come across some creatures that want to end you, you'll solve a puzzle or two, you'll learn more about the story, you'll find notes and logs, you'll piece everything together, you do some bigger, grander puzzles, multiple items come into play, and then there's a big explosive ending, and that's the game. And while that might sound pretty reductive, yeah, I guess the gameplay could be boiled down to that, but I'm going to quickly look at each part of it. When it comes to the areas and exploring, this is another really great part of Crow Country. I think the level design is actually very well done. This isn't the biggest map by any means. It's actually relatively small and you can go across the entire thing in just a few minutes, but the way everything is connected and how seamless it all feels is really great. I love just exploring this area. All of the environments do feel really different from each other. With it being a theme park, they all have themes to them, and I just liked how different each area was. There's a good amount of variety. I really like how it just interconnected the whole thing feels, and you'll frequently go back and forth between this entire park, and it becomes just second nature, and you'll know where everything is. It's just all very well laid out. So the level design is pretty solid. When it comes to the resource management or the survival elements, it's nothing you haven't seen before. You find health items, you find antidotes to cure poison, ammunition, and that's pretty much all the resource management there is. There are some secret items you can find, 15 in fact, and I didn't find all in my first playthrough, but these really do help you out. Something like making you run twice as fast. Yeah, that's pretty helpful. So while I would say a majority of the game is exploring around the park and doing the puzzles, you will get into combat. There are plenty of creatures here to kill Mara, and the combat in this game is one of the weaker aspects in my opinion. You aren't like constantly swarmed or forced into combat. You're actually not forced into combat for a majority of the game, and I tried to avoid it as much as I can. The combat just feels kind of clunky. Like, you have this targeting system, you even have laser sights, and it should theoretically be way better than the older Resident Evils, but it just kind of feels about the same, where it's just kind of awkward, a bit clunky. You just kind of wait for the enemy to get super close to you, and then you blast away. When using like the shotgun, it's not that bad since it is kind of like a spread, but when you gotta do more accurate shots with like the pistol, yeah, it's just kind of okay. I never felt like I got a very good grasp, honestly, on the controls or the shooting in general. I mean, the combat, it's just kind of whatever. It's definitely not the focal point here. You won't get into like an absolute ton of combat. You can avoid almost all of the enemies, and when it comes to the ammunition resources, it actually is pretty low. They don't just give you a bazillion bullets to go blow everything away. You'll want to avoid most of these enemies, and I certainly did because I didn't love the combat of this game. It's not horrible, it's not terrible, it's just kind of there and it's okay. But I would say a majority of the gameplay is solving the puzzles, whether it's really simple stuff like you just need a certain item like a key to open a door, or some of the more complex puzzles that might involve a little bit of logic, facts, deduction, and even critical thinking. Usually I'm allergic to all of these, but Crow Country actually is pretty generous with its puzzles. I would not say there's even one puzzle here where I was just completely confused or lost. If you're just doing a decent amount of exploration, if you read the logs, I think you're going to be able to figure out all of these puzzles and know where you're supposed to go the entire game. If you really are unsure though, the game does have this fortune teller, which you can use 10 times in the game, where it will just straight up tell you the solution to like a puzzle or where you're supposed to go next. I used it a few times, but I totally could have beat the game without it. It was probably me just being a bit impatient. Another thing that's really helpful is in every save area, you can actually see every single log or note you've picked up, and a lot of the time the solution is just straight up in these logs, or at the very least there is like crucial information, and so being able to view this at any save point is incredibly helpful. You also don't have like limited saves. The game isn't super stingy with its resources, and you can't like soft lock yourself, at least not that I can see. I think the game is pretty forgiving when it comes to its puzzles, and I think pretty much anybody could figure these out, especially with the whole fortune teller, which really will tell you what you're supposed to do if you get like just completely lost. And I think that this is a great way to like ease players into it, especially if they haven't really played many survival horror games. I mean, you don't have to use the fortune teller, it's just there. It's better than using a walkthrough. I didn't use a walkthrough because one didn't exist, because I played the game before it was out. If I was able to beat it, you can too. I believe in you. But I am sure there will be people who will say the puzzles are super duper easy in this game, and you know, they very well might be, but I still felt kind of smart after I solved a few of them on my own. I was like, ooh, 300 IQ out here, I just solved this shit. Okay, maybe it's not that, but I did feel satisfied when I did solve a few of these puzzles, and usually Mara will say something actually about it too. She actually has some pretty good dialogue here that is a little self-aware of just the entire situation and how ridiculous it gets. You find someone and she asks if he's been able to see anything, and he literally says no. There's all these locked doors and all these obtuse puzzles in the way, and I'm like, yeah, a survival horror game. But I'm getting sidetracked here. I think the puzzles are good. I think the gameplay for the most part is actually very good. It's not the best survival horror gameplay ever, and it certainly can be a little rough around the edges at times, especially with the combat that I am less than thrilled with, but for the most part, I think the gameplay is really solid. Something else I want to highlight is the sound design. The sound design is very good in this game. All of the weapons sound nice, the monsters sound scary, the music is very good and really adds to the atmosphere. I love when you save your game, like, that's just a really good vibe, and that's thanks to some excellent sound design. Let's wrap things up. Is Crow Country worth your time? I think it is. If you like survival horror games, particularly older survival horror games, I think you're really going to dig this one. It isn't the longest experience. In fact, I'd say that's probably one of my other little gripes with it, is that it is a pretty short game. I mean, I had no walkthrough or anything like that, and I still finished the game in under 5 hours. I mean, those old Resident Evil games were not the longest, but 5 hours is still pretty short. Obviously, it's incredibly replayable, and they actually do give you plenty of incentives to replay it, but yeah, it is a bit short, but it's also not like a full price game or anything like that. Look, if you like survival horror games, I think this one really is worth picking up. If you're even a small fan of the genre, yeah, I think it's worth your time, and if it looks cool, check it out. It's a small indie game. It's not some big AAA publisher who wants you to tip the developers and then is going to lay everyone off at the drop of a bucket for the next earnings call. No, this is a small indie game that is trying to be a fun throwback to the survival games of old, and I think they absolutely nail it. The vibe, the aesthetic, the gameplay, it really all does come together with a superb mystery and story that, yeah, it's worth your time today. And it gets a solid thumbs up from me, my favorite survival horror game of the year so far. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope it was what you're looking for. Let me know if you're going to check this game out, or if you just do not want to see videos like this. Anyway, have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.